Have you ever wondered what could have been in Season 7 of The Clone Wars? We know the 3 arcs that we had, but actually Filoni and the team had plenty of other episodes already written. Some of them were just concepts. They even animated quite a few of them. Well, in this episode, I'm delving deep into these concepts and what could have been, and how it kind of reflects what Season 7 of The Clone Wars was. Now, I'm joined by Maff and Dave in this for my co-hosts of Clone Wars Conversations, and this was recorded at the back end of watching the Ahsoka's Walkabout, so the middle arc of Season 7 of The Clone Wars, and this was before Maff had seen the finale, so we don't really talk about that. So there are no spoilers for the actual finale, but this is a discussion for everything that could have been in The Clone Wars. I'm going to be including images that pop up of concept art and those sorts of things in this, but please tell us what you thought, subscribe to Star Wars Chit-Chat, and make sure you tune in to all the regular episodes of Clone Wars Conversations, where myself, Maff and Dave delve deep into all episodes of The Clone Wars, and keep an eye out for our review of the final arc of The Clone Wars coming out very soon about the Siege of Mandalore. And we've already got some more plans for recording, including a lot of the Tales of stuff. So if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe, comment, open a conversation up, and really just enjoy yourself. So without further ado, here is the Clone Wars Conversations sort of add-on bonus about the unreleased episodes that could have been. Let's get into some of the unfinished episodes for the last sort of little while of this. So there's about 6 kind of ideas of varying amounts that we know about. So I'll talk about them each, and then we'll give a little bit of thoughts, and then we'll kind of go through it like that. So the first, they basically said, this is according to a Wikipedia on the fandom websites. So it's essentially that seasons 7 and 8 were essentially all written out. And then obviously everything got cancelled. And seasons 6 and 7 were originally going to have 24 episodes each as well. So we'd have had a lot of episodes, but obviously season 6 was cut down to 13. This is only 12. So, you know, these two only really made like 1 episode. Plus we've got the unfinished episodes, plus Son of Dathomir, Dark Disciple, blah. We kind of have a general idea. But yeah, there would have been 8 seasons if things hadn't been cancelled. So the first one that they didn't do, which is referenced in the canon, is the Bounty Hunter arc. So this is one which would have essentially been about Boba Fett and Cad Bane teaming up. They would have gone to Tatooine, where Tusken Raiders would have kidnapped a child. There would have been a lot of connections to what we saw in Book of Boba Fett, because there was going to be like a shaman and things. There was going to be, you know, Aura Singh was going to probably pop up again. Those kind of things. The reason I mention this quite an interesting and important one is when in Book of Boba Fett, him and Cad Bane have that face-off, and he's like, you know, you won't get me, kid. And then they shoot each other and Cad Bane allegedly dies. That is directly referencing what happens in this, because the bit where Boba Fett and Cad Bane face off, that's been animated. I think somewhere on YouTube you can watch it, because they have like is it called a Mexican standoff? Where you walk 10 paces, you pull your gun out, and then, you know, that thing. When that happens, so the dent in Boba Fett's helmet that is in canon from just after the Clone Wars, and you see it in all Star Wars stuff, that dent is Cad Bane's shooting him, getting a headshot, but obviously it bounces off his helmet, whereas that's meant to be Boba Fett shot him, and if those episodes had been made, Bane would have died in that. Obviously, that didn't happen because Bane pops up in future content, including Book of Boba Fett. So that would have been it. So a 4-episode arc with more Boba Fett, more bounty hunters, potentially Bosk and Embo, Aura Singh, people like that. So Dave, do you have any sort of, you know, we won't delve super deep into these because there's a few to spin through, but would you have liked that? Would you like the Boba Fett and bounty hunters Cad Bane stuff a bit more?
Yeah, had you asked me before the Boba Fett series, definitely. Absolutely thirsting for that, but be careful what you wish for sometimes.
Yeah, that was a big bloody letdown.
I mean, pretty much all of that you've mentioned sounds better than what we got. I'm trying to rationalize what possessed them to push this so much.
Oh, you're going to be asking that a lot more when we get to some of the other episodes.
I don't understand it. I mean, the guy, I was looking, I've closed it down now, but the guy who wrote the episodes also did, so Charles Murray, looks like he's also done stuff like Luke Cage, you know, he's done quite a bit of TV writing.
I just looked as well. He did the 4 episodes of where Ahsoka leads the Jedi Order,
which are arguably the best episodes of Clone Wars in existence, or amidst them.
It's like I've rolled a nat 20 and I've rolled a nat 1.
Maybe he just phoned this one in, or you know, there are other things. I just don't know. I don't suppose there is theories as to why we got this, but
I think it was when we watched the next 4, these episodes, although weekly, they purely bolster up what's coming. And I think as you nailed it right on the head, Dave, right at the start of this, which is all these episodes serve is literally, it's a shortcut. Because the finale of the Clone Wars that we're going to see when we record in a few days' time, that finale was always going to be the finale of the Clone Wars. That's been planned by Filoni, mainly Filoni, because it kind of got planned, I think, when they were partway through season 3, 4-ish. But Filoni's always had the idea for the finale, which again, I won't spoil. But I think the whole thing is that what was going to happen is over season 7 and 8, we were going to get drips and drabs of Ahsoka. I imagine there would have been a Lux Bonteri episode. I imagine this episode would have been somewhere about, because this was nicknamed Ahsoka's Walkabout. You know, this was mentioned at Star Wars Celebration like years and years and years and years ago before Clone Wars was going to get remade. And I think this was going to be kind of, we probably would have got an episode or 2 of Ahsoka being completely lost. These episodes would have come in and kind of had Ahsoka kind of realizing and being found. But I imagine this would have ended differently, and she wouldn't have connected with Bo-Katan. And then because some of the Council's episodes, again, I'm going to mention, she had more missions. She doesn't stay with the Order for longer, but there's one coming up I'm going to talk about where she teams up with Anakin again. And and I imagine that would have been really interesting to see what their dynamic was after she left the Order. And again, there would have been a much longer period of time for Ahsoka's character to slowly change from leaving the Order and becoming who we see her really in Rebels, that kind of thing, you know? But I think what they were trying to do is right, we've only been commissioned 12 episodes. We need the Bad Batch ones because we're going to pilot the Bad Batch. We need the finale because that's what we're really gunning for. What's the most important thing here in the middle? Well, the Book of Boba Fett series is being made, so we don't really need to worry about that. Some of these other episodes are cool, but there's no backdoor pilot to anything else. And it's like, well, people want more Ahsoka. People are going to question, because when we, again, get to the finale, it's very Ahsoka-centric. If we saw Ahsoka leave the Order and then we saw the finale, you'd be like, what is happening? But again, it should have been 2 episodes of something different and 2 episodes of this, not 4 episodes of this. But I guess they had this written as 4 episodes when they had 68 odd episodes to play with, and so it didn't seem like such a big slice of the pie. But when it's a third of the finale season, it feels like so much more. I think it was poorly done, but that's the only argument I can find that really makes sense of all this.
I'm struggling now because all I can think is, if this was Ahsoka's Walkabout, they really missed out on the bit where she could have said, "That's not a lightsaber, that's a lightsaber." You know, the thing is, I feel that they do Ahsoka dirty by doing this, though, because, like you said, they could have done like 2 episodes of something and 2 episodes, you know, even just maybe 1 episode of the Bounty Hunters, 1 episode of something else, 1 episode of this, and then 1 episode of this of Ahsoka. You know, Bo-Katan finding Ahsoka saying, "Look, I don't know why they need her, but they obviously need her for a reason."
I have to think it's something weird. Like, I mean, I can't. One of the conspiracy theories in my head is they need to make these average episodes so the next ones really sing. I don't think anyone sets out to make a poor episode, though. But it could almost be a scheduling thing as well. Like, the people that they needed for those other scripts just weren't going to be available when they needed them to be available. Daniel Logan, who plays Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones, he recorded his lines for this unused Boba. So they've got most of the audio for at least one of these. The Bounty Hunter one, again, they partly animated. You can see online. You can see the Cad Bane Boba Fett fight in the style of the unfinished episodes. And Daniel Logan did record his Boba Fett lines for the unused. So again, you're like, what? Why couldn't they have just pop that in there? So unfortunately, for some of the future episodes I'm going to mention, there are, I think, quite clear reasonings why they didn't really develop them more. But the Bounty Hunter one, it gets kind of referenced. Obviously, Cad Bane survives, so they do tweak that element. But it's like, I don't know. But Maff, with the Bounty Hunter one, before we move on to the next thing, would you have liked to see more Boba Fett and Bosk Bounty Hunter stuff, or are you just kind of lukewarm on that? I'd
have been quite happy 4 episodes of watching the guys painting the Death Star as opposed to this. Sorry, Mike.
No, I mean, excluding, I know these were not the best, but I mean, just would you have been interested to see?
Definitely, I'd have loved to see some Bounty Hunter stuff,
and more Boba Fett growing into who we know him as.
Oh, like we've seen all the singing and kind of what happened there, and seeing how Boba Fett's kind of building that team together, and that would have been really good. I'd have enjoyed that. You know, you could have even had Ahsoka along for the ride with them. You know, kind of said, okay, right, you know, she just happens to get mixed up with them, and it's like, well, I'm gonna have to work with you guys just to get through this point, and then, you know, again, have Bo-Katan turn up at some point.
Yeah, it's frustrating because there was so it says here that Daniel Logan recorded lines for 7 Boba Fett episodes, including the Fett Angel. So he only needed to be probably in the studio for another day, and he would have done it. So I think that's a bit of a letdown because I think the bounty hunter stuff in Bad Batch we do get. I imagine the reason they didn't use the bounty hunter thing is because a percentage of the Bad Batch episodes do lean in on bounty hunter kind of stuff, and that's some of the best parts of it. I'd say the best parts of the Bad Batch is the question of what do soldiers do when there's no longer a war, which is a through line, and then there's some quite cool bounty hunter stuff, and then there's about 20% which is just like fetch quests, which is quite boring, but which is why Dave hasn't finished season 1 of Bad Batch, but we'll get there, friends, because I'm going to force him. But we'll move on. So then there's Ahsoka's Walkabout. So just for clarity, the 2 characters, the Martez sisters, they were originally one character who was a guy called Nix Okami, who she developed a close relationship with, apparently. I don't know anything about him. Moving swiftly on. So then we've got Kashyyyk. Now, this is the one that I told Megan about, and she was genuinely quite angry when I told her this is what we could have got instead of these Ahsoka episodes. So Megan's favourite thing in Star Wars is she loves Wookiee Jedi. In Acolyte, they ruin it a little bit. But you've got the Wookiee Padawan, Gunji, who's in the Gathering episodes. Is really, really cool. I quite like him, and, keep your eye out. But Megan loves the Wookiees because the Wookiees in Star Wars, and they tackle this actually weirdly enough in the audiobook I'm listening to at the moment of High Republic, which is the Wookiees commune with the Force. They're generally more Force sensitive than most normal beings. They don't often become Jedi because generally they don't want to. They've got their own little place on Kashyyyk and things. But a lot of the time they speak to the trees. They feel the forest spirits and they can commune with the trees on Kashyyyk, these giant Wosher trees, I think they're called, if memory serves from Fallen Order. So the Wookiees are very much very nature-y, which I love. They're very, very interesting. Now Tarful, who is the black-furred Wookiee from Revenge of the Sith, he would have been one of the main characters. So the idea would have been Yoda and the Bad Batch go to Kashyyyk, and it would be essentially tree spirits communicating with, there'd be like a forest thing, there'd be some monsters and stuff, and it would really show when Yoda says he's got good relationships with the Wookiees in Revenge of the Sith, it would have explained that. It would have shown the Bad Batch a bit more. It would have given a bit more weight to Tarful. I imagine we probably have seen Chewbacca in there. Oh yeah, it says here Chewbacca would have played a large role. So it would really be a very much a Kashyyyk-centric episode. And there's a thing here, and this isn't a spoiler, in one of the Bad Batch episodes, one of the characters specifically mentions they'd been to Kashyyyk before, and Star Wars have officially confirmed that that is referencing these Clone Wars episodes that weren't made. So again, there's these Clone Wars episodes that wouldn't have contradicted the canon, that would have shown us another side of the Wookiees, which have also would have bolstered the Bad Batch even more. Why couldn't we have got 2 episodes of that, 2 episodes of this? So come to you first, Maff. Do you like the Wookiees? Have you got any kind of opinions on that? Like, I suppose we haven't seen them much, but what would you have thought of an arc a bit like that?
I'm not going to attempt to do a sound of the Wookiee, but we've had the Wookiees before. We had the bit where Ahsoka was with some other...
With the Trandoshans. That was... Yeah. But that was only 1 or 2 episodes, I think, when she meets Chewbacca.
Yeah, because Chewbacca turns up at...
Yeah.
That's awesome, and, again, a little bit fan service, because you've got Chewbacca in there, but... And we did say at the time, did it need to be Chewbacca? It could have been any Wookiee just to kind of do the maintenance, but whatever. That... Again, would have been so much better. Fill it out a little bit more. If this is going to be your last season, then kind of give the fans what they want. Throw in them Easter eggs. I mean, going back to the previous, to the episode when they mentioned Kessler, do a Kessler run. Show us what that is. There's stuff there they could, them picking the spice up could have gone wrong and they had to escape, and then they do what this Kessel
They do the Kessel Run, but they do it in less than 14 or 12 parsecs, because it was 12 parsecs is Han Solo's record, 14 is kind of like, someone says, oh, he did it in 14, it's like 12, It would have been fun to see them do it like in 18 or something, you know. And I'm excited for you too, because just a question, Maff. How many times have you seen Solo, Maff?
I think just the once.
Oh, I'm excited to show you guys that again, because I think it's quite underrated. When I first watched it, I quite
enjoyed it. I thought it was quite
average. Right. I was it didn't really excite me, but upon rewatching, and again, I think once you've consumed a lot more Star Wars content, when you go into that, it is quite a film for the fans.
I think I'm going to probably enjoy it more again this time, because having played Outlaws,
yes,
it feels like you're kind of playing Solo.
Exactly. It's a good movie. It's not phenomenal. There's definitely some big flaws in it, but it's not. But Dave, anything about the Wookiees and Kashyyyk that you want to mention?
No, I'm trying not to beat up the episodes, but I mean, I feel like anything, you know, give me Wookiees, give me Wookiees, give me bounty hunters, anything, Jar Jar Binks, just throw them all at me. I would have taken anything over these episodes. So if the objective was to, you know, make sure we had a lull before we get into some really good episodes and remind me why I feel in my guts that this is a great season, then it's done its job there.
Well, I'm going to tell you what the next thing is, and I'm going to get you to answer about this, Dave. Here's the elevator pitch. Rex and R2-D2 Top Gun. So it would have been, how cool does that sound? It would have been a 4-episode arc that was fully written, the script was, starring Rex and R2. Essentially, there would be the clone army and some pilots getting to some sort of arguments and things, and then R2-D2 and Rex would have had to fly together. Rex isn't really much of a pilot, so they would have crashed and been stranded on one of the moons of Ryloth, and then they would have reprogrammed a B2 series battle droid, and they would have grown attached to it. And then Rex at some point would have got injured, and then they would have, and apparently the arc started out light and fun, but goes to some very dark and unexpected places. A B2 battle droid, by the way, is the big shouldery ones with like no head. So what would you have thought if we'd have got that?
You're just trying to piss me off now. So yeah, that would have been far, far better. It's interesting, the Top Gun reference, because Top Gun Maverick was basically a New Hope as well. The way they did that, it was the same script. But yeah, that would have been so much better. And I do feel shortchanged with Rex. He's kind of always on the periphery of a lot of the Clone Wars and the Rebels as well, but we never get a deep dive into, you know, a Rex story. So I feel even more shortchanged now.
The only silver lining is that Bad Batch, at some point, I'm not saying how much or when, you get a little bit of closure. That's my tease of Bad Batch in that regard. What about you, Maff? Would you have liked to see, to quote Dave Filoni, this was Top Gun with clones?
Yeah, give me that. I mean, you know, you say that, R2 and Rex crashes you. Well, that's what Anakin does, so, you know, kind of used to that. You know, Anakin always crashes his ships, so it's fine. It's part of the landing. But again, that would have been so much better. You know, having that kind of, especially having two, you could say, technical side characters becoming the forefront characters. I'm not a big fan of the droids. R2 is still always great when he's on screen. You know, it's same as when, you know, reading the comics and with Dr. Aphra and you've got Triple Zero and stuff. Yeah, you know, Chopper in Rebels.
Yeah, it's Dave's favourite.
The thing is, that is kind of, you know, it's like, I'll buy into that. I can take that and I'll enjoy it. And fine, it might be just a few beeps and squeaks, but you kind of get what R2 is saying just from, it's not the body language isn't the right thing because it's
it's mannerisms. It is, yeah. You get like with the dog, right? You know, with animals and stuff, you can tell with what they're kind of feeling, even though you can't speak the language.
Yeah. So again, yeah.
I'm sorry. There's a couple more to go. There's 3 more, and then we'll be wrapping up. This next one is very brief. Have you guys ever heard of the Yuuzan Vong? No.
Nope.
Okay. So I won't ask your opinions on this. I'm just almost going to skim through this. So Yuuzan Vong, they're massive in Legends. They were something that George Lucas really hated. So they were the big bad. I believe it was the New Jedi Order. It was like a 14-book series that followed another several series. Luke, Grand Master of the Jedi, and these beings from the unknown regions in space come in, and they are completely immune to the Force. So if you try and use a Force push on them, it won't work. You try and use the Force around them, I think it doesn't really work on them. So they were really a big problem for the New Jedi Order, and they were the main scourge of the galaxy, and they were like the big bad in Legends continuity, or at least one of them. Lucas hated that because he says every character has the Force, and that you can't have a character that doesn't have any Force immunity or anything like that. So this episode would have been, it probably would have only been a one-off episode, a scout ship with Yuuzan Vong, because this is the point before the Disney canon reset. So they were still somewhat trying to fit in with Legends continuity, which is probably why this episode didn't get picked up. It was essentially going to be a creepy story, kind of like an X-File episode with an alien abduction event, and it would have been like a mystery trying to work out what it was, and it would have been a soft reveal that it would have been the Yuuzan Vong, and that they were probably from another galaxy, but they never got into the origins of the Yuuzan Vong. So it would have been a nice kind of nod to something that wouldn't have had to go anywhere. So that one I'm kind of neutral on, but I've not read all the stories with Yuuzan Vong. I only know peripheral knowledge about that. Then we've got two more. I'm going to save onto that until last, because that sounds like the coolest one. So I'll go to one of the final ones, which is Return to Mon Cala. So Padme Amidala, who obviously is not really in these episodes at all, and kind of gets forgotten about, it seems, after season 5. She was working against Palpatine and his prolonged stay in office. She goes to Mon Cala, speaks with King Lee Char once again. Then there's been a Quarren lead who gets murdered. There's a bit more political stuff regarding the Mon Cala and etc. like that. And then a group of people express further frustrations with Palpatine, and then Lee Char basically stops trusting the Republic because of what happened to Ahsoka. So that would have been interesting seeing them come back. And I will say they changed certain elements of that because a character was going to die and they don't kill them in that. There's also the Darth Vader comics, the 2017 ones with Charles Soule that you've both read, where Vader goes to Mon Cala right after, only a couple of years, I think, after the takeover of the Empire. A lot of what happened in that story, I believe, kind of feeds into that story. And then also, the same time the Vader 2017 run was going on, in the 2015 run of the Star Wars comics that went on for like 4 years, 75 issues, Leia, Luke, and the gang go to Mon Cala after A New Hope. And what you see is, if you read the comics as they were coming out, you would see Vader causing damage and Leia and Luke coming across the damage and trying to heal it, essentially 15, maybe 20 years on. So it was quite interesting seeing those two comic stories line up. Again, that arc, they didn't use it, and it's not canon. You know, aside from the Kashyyyk one, pretty much none of these are considered even remotely canon. They don't get referenced.
That could have been quite cool, because maybe the issue why they don't do that is because you would have seen Padme showing. Because
maybe, yeah, it would have probably messed up the timeline a little bit.
Yeah, and then the question, well, should she be doing all this? You know, what would have been really cool, because when we had the underwater scenes, I thought it looked really cool back then. The way that the animation is now, it could have been 10 times better. But,
yeah, I can't remember if Bad Batch, they definitely don't go to Mon Cala from memory, but I think they might have a water episode or two. And Bad Batch, the quality of Bad Batch's animation is this, but better. Well, as good as this, I'd say. But Dave, do you have any opinions on it? Would you have wanted to see Mon Cala? I'm kind of neutral on it personally, but would you have been interested by that?
I'm fairly lukewarm on Mon Cala as well. Yeah. I think it would probably, I'd take it if I had a choice in a parallel universe over these episodes, but yeah, I'm not particularly thirsting like that. The other ideas, I think I'd warm to more.
I think King Lee Char not trusting the Republic because of what happened to Ahsoka, I think that would have been a really interesting concept, but I'd be interested to know how he found out about that, but we'll never know. Right, the last one, and then we will wrap up this. This is the one which generally fans wanted the most, I think. I personally still would probably have just leaned on the Kashyyyk one a smidge more, but this one sounds really interesting, but there's not much episode about it. So it's called Return to the Jedi Temple. Story would have been about what lay beneath the Jedi Temple. So we know in canon, it was in Legends quite a lot, but in canon, the Jedi Temple was built on an old Sith temple back 1,000 years ago. So what would have happened is there was like a Sith shrine or something underneath. Ahsoka and Anakin would have worked together in these special vehicles. There would be a giant skeleton kaiju down there, so there's giant being thing under there. Then Ahsoka would discover a threat in the underworld of Coruscant, so she has to try and go back to the Jedi Order to warn them. She, Obi-Wan and Anakin would have set out to rescue Master Yoda from the Sith Shrine, and then the arc would have also featured Darth Sidious trying to break into the Holocron Vault of the Jedi once again, but Ahsoka would hinder his progress. And then there's a drawing which I think was drawn by Dave Filoni, and it's Ahsoka being shocked by Sidious's Force lightning, and it looks to be probably in a way that's kind of like the way he was going after Ezra in Rebels, which is kind of like through that weird void thing. Now, those ideas, I think, definitely lent themselves to the world between worlds kind of stuff that happened with Ezra, but that a lot of that occurring is not canon, to clarify, because Vader doesn't know about the Sith Shrine in canon. There's a book, Tarkin, and he learns about there being a Sith Shrine underneath the Jedi Temple after Order 66. So, again, it's a minor thing. But, Maff, would you have wanted a dark side theme story with Ahsoka and Obi-Wan basically trying to find some Sith stuff?
Definitely. I mean, that sounds so much better than... that could have elevated Season 7 even more. You know, just one finding, you know, the Jedi Temple and then finding, oh, there's a Sith Temple underneath this, and, you know, having all these things, and maybe I'm like, say, they have to go get rescue Yoda, and that maybe he's getting corrupted, maybe that episode we have where Yoda sees like an evil version, you know, maybe that's kind of Yoda turning into, I don't know, you know, again, we never get this. But would have been so much better than what we got here. And coulda, woulda, shoulda.
And Dave, you aren't as into Force stuff as I am, but dark side stuff's quite cool. Would you have wanted that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the dark side stuff would win me over. And the other thing, as you've described it there, that comes to mind is it would have been really significant. You know, and so if you have a really significant event, then you can almost build other branches of stories from that thing. Whereas this, I don't know what, these are just throwaway episodes, really. I'm trying to be nice in saying it guides Ahsoka's future path, but like I say, it could have been a quick monologue that would also have done the same thing. But yeah, that would have been a significant, you know, fairly big series of episodes, I think, which would have been far better.
I mean, I don't know what's to come in the next few episodes, but knowing what happens in the third film, Revenge of the Sith, having, you know, Sidious going in there trying to take one of the holocrons and that, you know, him trying to, at this point, activate his plan moving it forward, it works with the timeline.
We get that in the Yoda one, don't we? He originally is going to try and take over and do his things, but he says, no, the Jedi Elder's not weak enough yet. And that, as you say, Matt, I hadn't thought about that. That episode would have been a good opportunity for Sidious to have tried again and gone, no, I'm still not quite there. I need to...
Yeah, it still leads on to that. Right, okay, buying my time a little bit. Because, I mean, the thing is, like I said before, when we see Maul, I thought that was Sidious at first because of the hood. But then I kind of thought, nah, it can't be right. But if you'd have done that here, it again would have worked a lot better because it leads on to what we get next, what in canon comes next, and that, you know, just someone made the wrong decision.
Yeah, this was a misfire, unfortunately. And then very briefly, they also said that some other ideas throwing around would have been the Zilla Beast returning. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen elsewhere, so we'll see. Then there's also a plan to bring back Barriss Offee. And I said to you, at some point, we will tackle something that gives us a little bit of closure of Barriss Offee. This does not happen, to clarify. But what they were going to do was they were originally going to have, as a version of the Wrong Jedi episode which we saw, of Barriss Offee was going to kill herself, which was very dark, and I don't think I'd have necessarily liked that, but when we eventually get some degree of closure on that character, then we can have that discussion again. And then there was going to be Aurra Sing was going to be featured in quite a few episodes of season 6, and she would have been killed eventually, which obviously I didn't do, but in Solo, Tobias Beckett is known to have killed Aurra Sing, so she dies anyway. But that's all of those elements. So these 4 episode arc, bit of a disappointment. And they're not one I'm probably ever going to rewatch, to be honest. I will rewatch the finale of this series, which we're going to get onto next many times because it's phenomenal, but I will not be rewatching these ones. I do not have an issue necessarily with the Martez sisters, but I think we all just agree it was drawn out, it felt a bit rushed, and the story itself just doesn't work as well as it should, and the themes and parts of Ahsoka, which we agree are quite good, are just not focused upon enough at all here. So yeah, I'd say the only real things here, this is going to be coming out in a little while, so we won't really be able to plug all the stuff we're up to, so I'll just say the usual things. Check stuff in the description. We've all done stuff for Back to Filmography. We're all doing stuff for Spider and the Secret Bores. I'm doing a few things with 20th Century Geek, who is doing a Superman retrospective. I think a couple of us might be getting involved with some of the Superman movies and things. So he's doing that before James Gunn's new Superman film's coming out. So that will be out by the time this comes out too. So lots of cool stuff. They'll all be in the description when they come out. You can find Maff in various places, just kind of popping up in the podcast sphere. And you can find Dave on the VHS Strikes Back, as well as Chris and Dave's Reality Cast. And you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat. And wherever you're listening to this, if it's on Genuine Chit-Chat, Star Wars Chit-Chat, or Comics in Motion, anything like that, please like, subscribe, share, leave reviews, and tell all your friends about it. I assume with you two, there's nothing else you needed me to add upon that? Nope. So, my friends, there's nothing else to say apart from we await the finale, the big boys. So, my friends, may the Force be with you.
Always.